Hey learners, welcome to the Nav Nerds. In today's video, we are going to talk about one of the important and often confusing topic in the Power BI, which is calculated columns and the measures. Many beginners got confused about the when should we use the calculated columns and when should we use the measures. So in this video, we will cover what are the calculated columns, what are measures, difference between them, and the real world examples. So let's get started. So what's a calculated column? A calculated column is a new column that is created by performing a calculation row by row. In other words, Power BI evaluates the formula separately from every single row in the table. For example, imagine if we have a table with two columns, which are quantity and the unit price. And if we want to calculate the total amount, we can simply multiply this quantity multiplied by unit price. In this case, we can create calculated column that perform this calculations for every rows and stores the result as a new column in the table. In this data I have, let's take the month and then orders and returns. So I will calculate the net orders, which will be subtracting returns from the orders. In the more option, new column, net orders and then the orders and the returns. Here's the new column, and if I add this to the visual, so here's my net orders, 100 minus 10, 90, 67 minus 9, 58. And the same thing I can do with the new measures. So in the more option, new measure, I will name it as measures net order. For distinguish purpose, and I have to sum it first. And here I got the new measure. I will simply add this. Here you can see that the values are the same in the measures and in the column. So where's the difference? So what measures are? Now let's understand what are the measures. Measures are used for dynamic calculations in the Power BI. Unlike the calculated columns, measures are not calculated row by row and stored in the table. Instead, they are calculated dynamically based on the context of the visual. Example, let's take a look at this measure. First, this measure calculates the number of orders and then it calculates the number of returns and subtract the return from the total orders and give us the final result. So the main difference between the calculated column and the measure is calculated columns are stored in memory because Power BI calculates the value from every row and save it inside the model. On the other hand, measures do not store values in the data model. They simply calculates the value when needed and display the result in the visual. Because measures don't store data, they take very small little space and help us to keep our Power BI model optimized. So whenever you are creating KPIs dashboards or performance metrics, it's always better to create measures instead of calculated columns whenever possible. And then we have the type of measures. Now the measures are also divided into two types, the implicit and the explicit. The measures I have created here, the net orders, is the explicit measure because I manually created it using the tax formula. And what about the implicit measures? Now let's understand what are the implicit measure are. Suppose I have taken column like orders and added into the visual. When we go to the drop down option here, we can see different functions like sum, average, minimum, maximum, count, median, and many more here. All these automatically generate calculations. For example, if I select sum, Power BI automatically calculates the total sum of the order. Similarly, if I click on the average, it calculates the average order value and then the count. And if I don't summarize, it returns to the original value. However, I have manually created a new measure using the new measure option and write a DAX formula, then that becomes an explicit measure. So the calculations that Power BI automatically creates are called implicit measures, while the calculations that were created using DAX formulas are explicit measures. So, what should be our focus? We should try to create as many measures as possible instead of calculated columns. The reason is that the columns increase the size of our model because their values are stored in the memory. As the model size increases, performance can also decrease. So that's it for today's video, the calculated columns and the measures in Power BI. Thanks for watching.